Hey, yoo-hoo entrepreneurs, and welcome to the Possibility Partners Show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, your Chief Possibility Officer, and every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, you will find me right here on Google Plus Hangouts on Air, sharing Andelicious advice for entrepreneurial adventurers. And these are conversations with seasoned entrepreneurs, all sharing their best tips, tools, and resources to help you and your business keep humming along. And you and I both know, for entrepreneurs, we need to feed our minds and our hearts every single day. I mean, this journey that we're on, sure, we have these exhilarating moments. Oh my gosh, they're fabulous. And we have equally terrifying moments where we wake up in the middle of the night questioning our decision to be doing what we're doing. You know, uncertainty can crop its ugly head. And certainly one of my favorites, the why bother? What was I thinking? Oh my gosh. So I'm truly grateful and thrilled that you're tuning into the Possibility Partners Show, because we're here all holding hands and cheering each other on, celebrating the woohoos and the rut-rows. And we're also sharing courage and tenacity and resilience and persistence and hope, along with actionable business tips, tools, and resources, so that we can all have the successful outcome we long for with our businesses. Now, to stay encouraged and find more tips, tools, and resources for your business, please visit my website, andelyons.com, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Andelicious Advice. Thank you. So today, we're talking about our legal survival kits, right? We need to know what documents will help us be prepared legally for success. That's what we're looking for. And today I found at my favorite social media platform, Twitter, two amazing attorneys from Chicago. They are Rick Gruber and John Pasky. And let me bring them up here. Hi, guys.
Hi.
There's Rick is the one with the name obviously underneath it, and John, and they have a wonderful law firm. PaskyGruber.com is where you can find them there, but they also have a wonderful flat fee service website, which is what got me so excited, called Openlegal.co. So before we get into what legal documents we need to be protected and prepared as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as startups, I want to find out from these guys, how did they get started? Because let's face it, legal practice is a real entrepreneurial adventure. Right, Rick?
Yeah, it sure is. So I guess I was one of those kids who everyone said, I think it'd be good if you were a lawyer when you grow up. I don't think that was meant in a positive way, but it seems to have worked out. But my family are all small business owners or entrepreneurs, so it seemed a natural fit to do my own thing as things were progressing on in my professional career. As John will tell you about his background as well, our law practices were not our first businesses, so we come from both sides of the table in that respect. I started a dev shop in around 2009, where it was just me, and it sort of grew in 2011, and it's still running today as its own business. So that's what got us into this area of the law, at least on my side of it, and what got me interested in the corporate equity stuff and IP while I was in law school.
Now, Rick, you said a dev shop. What's that?
So I own another company that essentially builds digital things. So websites, e-commerce solutions, mobile solutions, things of that nature. It's a full-service digital creative agency.
Awesome, awesome. I call these guys geeky attorneys. Really.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, John will tell you his background and his geekiness, but I'm actually a developer, so that's what my background was before becoming a lawyer.
Yeah, I love that, because we're going to talk more about the equity raising, the intellectual property protection, et cetera. So I love that you have been on the other side of having to protect digital assets, as well as you know, patents or copyright or trademarks, etc. So thank you for that. All right, John, where did you get started? There you were minding your own business, and then you what? You wanted to become an attorney. Why?
Well, I knew I wanted to become an attorney. I think I was in 6th grade. There was a contest in my hometown in Indiana where we had a My Day in Court, a field trip for all the 6th graders, and there was an essay contest. I was able to write an essay, and they chose my essay out of all the 6th graders in the city, and I got to meet a judge. And after that point in my life, I was 11 or 12 years old. I knew I wanted to become a lawyer. Now, my parents had other ideas for me. They said you needed to get some sort of a degree first, which was true. And what ended up happening was my dad was an engineer, and so I took that path and went and got my degree in electrical engineering before becoming a lawyer, but I went straight to law school after that. And it was during that time as an engineering student that I learned about patent law. And so for the first couple of years of my career as a lawyer, different firms, and was sort of on this track of becoming a lawyer for small companies, big companies, and then at the certain point, I went off the rails, if you will, into my entrepreneurial journey, and started I jumped on with a friend of mine who had just gotten his MBA at the same undergraduate school as me. We were introduced by a common professor, and he was running a startup here in Chicago in the tech space, and I jumped on board with him, and we did that for about a year and a half. We raised some funding, and it really sparked my interest in running businesses. Before that, I didn't have a clue, and that was about 7-8 years ago now. And ever since then, I've been, as Rick was saying before, I've been kind of doing the whole entrepreneurial journey thing before getting back into the law practice a couple of years ago. So in 2009, as that business was running out of money as a startup, I started my own law firm and started getting some, just very small entrepreneurial startup clients. And then from there, in 2010, met up with a new friend of mine that became a business partner, and we ended up starting the Tech Week conference in Chicago, which now has grown to, about I think 12,000 people in Chicago every year, and they've expanded to a couple of different cities.
I saw that, John. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, told by my partner, he calls me an Adventurepreneur. Because we started some conferences, and now even so, after that, we started a company called Dev Network in 2012 when we both left Tech Week to do this in specific verticals in the tech space. So we now run conferences. Rick and I were able to go out to our Mobile Week conference in New York last month, and we were privileged enough to ring the bell on the NASDAQ stock market, the opening bell last month for our Mobile Week conference. So we still are able to understand the tech world very much at the ground floor, if you will. And I think that kind of leads into what you were saying before of, geeky attorneys. We are definitely on the cutting edge and on the ground floor of what the tech space is doing on a day-to-day basis.
I love it. It's like the perfect combination, right, viewers? Oh my gosh, especially for so many of us who have a lot of technology in what we do every day, whether we're developing apps or new platforms, etc. This is so exciting. So then you guys got together to start your a practice, a legal practice with a wonderful goddess. I saw her in the lineup too, right? Who wants to answer that one?
Yeah. Sorry, Andy. We started our practice about 6 months ago. We got together. I started practicing again in 2012, and it just so happened that in 2013, when I moved into new office space, that Rick was just down the hall, and we found a lot of overlap with a lot of clients, and we started getting other clients along the way. And now what we're doing is really focused on the startups really in the entrepreneurs. I saw when I started my practice up in 2012, there was a really interesting. I had been practicing with startups for the last couple of years, and they continue to these startups at the early stage of an entrepreneur's journey. Take a look at the legal aspects of things a lot of the times, and not put as much attention on them that I had found out from the business side needed to be had. And so what we did in 12, and it was very very small idea at that point. And then when we came together last fall, Rick and I really started working on this a lot and put out the website that you're seeing today with Openlegal. So more than, but now I think we have, what is it, Rick, about a dozen clients now on the platform? Is that about right? Yeah.
I would say we have, that's a rough estimate for sure.
Rick, how did you and John decide to choose a flat fee revenue model for Openlegal?
We kind of joke about it. So it's something that John had roughly been toying with in trying to figure out the ins and outs of it before we joined together. And I think it sort of came full circle, as you know, creative things do, when he met a new law partner who happened to also be a developer and could build the thing that he had in his mind. And we sort of built it out. And I will tell you, the original alpha version of what we had, where we're like, ta-da, it's done, and then we showed it to a few of our existing clients. We're like, no, that's stupid. You should do it like this. And then we worked through some stuff, and so for the first few months, it was like any beta version where some things worked, some things didn't, and as we sort of, the fog of the development, subsided and we were able to see it more clearly again, we're like, you know what? That kind of doesn't make sense. So I have them all in my GitHub repository so that people can see, like, we went through iterations. Now, prices never have gone up from what we originally did. But it was just us figuring out what made sense, and even writing some of the copy where when we went back and read it, we're like, who's going to understand this? I don't even know what we mean.
I love it. That's a great challenge that you're sharing, that we all share as entrepreneurs, Rick. because we we throw the spaghetti up on the wall and we get started. We're like, oh, and then we get feedback from our customers. I love that. So where is it today?
We were talking to some of our. Actually, I was the other day with a few of our clients, and we had a happy hour event at our place to get some networking going amongst our clients. And I go, listen, guys, just because we're a law firm doesn't mean we have a lot of money. We're a startup just like you, and do you see us hanging out with a lot of other lawyers? And they're like, you know what? No. I said, yeah, because we're one of you. We just happen to be legal professionals, but if this is our space, and those are all of our friends. We don't go to the country club with a bunch of lawyers. It's really not our scene.
Right. You're not getting paid the $500,000+ per hour. Don't get me started. I love the flat fee. I think what you guys have is a wonderful model. Now, as attorneys, we all know, or maybe it's a misconception, but my experience working with attorneys, oh my gosh, the hours are so long. How do you guys put in systems that help you have a balance, or perhaps not balance, things that will keep you inspired and keep you going?
Well, that is, thank you for noticing. Yes, we are right at that early growth stage where we are doing probably 80 to 90 hours a week, and and I'll let John speak to this, where we're in the scale up mode, where it's at some point now we're getting enough clients that we need some people to replace doing the lower level operations and administrative stuff that we're just at a tipping point for us. But it's that question where, is it too early to bring people, or if we don't, are we too late at bringing them? And we're in that space right now, and I'm sure John has a lot to say on that piece of it.
Yeah, go ahead and share, John, because scaling is never easy. I pointed out, we work right here. One can scale using virtual people, great, but it's still that fine balance, right, John?
It is. It is because, as a law firm, our number one thing that we're doing is servicing clients, right? It's at the very, base level, we're a customer service centric business. But the limiting factor is still the case with any law firm, no matter what it is, as we're growing and as we're creating what we're doing as a business versus a form-filling service. There are lots of those in the legal space, or virtual attorney type practices, which again are a lot of form repositories. What we're growing is something slightly different, which is we are real attorneys at a flat fee. Well, real attorneys don't scale, right? The same way that you can't scale a law firm that is charging, as you say, the $500 to $1,000 an hour, to make it affordable for the entrepreneurs and to make it affordable for the small businesses. What we have to do is scale in a way where we can create a box around specific packages. And so, in that package that we're doing for, let's call it patents, let's call it trademarks, let's call it general counsel services, it's incumbent upon us. The whole premise of Openlegal is to, put the onus on us as lawyers to make sure that we take it upon ourselves to make it a package for you and a predictable spend for you as the entrepreneur or the small business owner. Right now, that's not the way that professional services are set up in the legal space. Right now, the model is, let me bring you in the door, let me get you with some sort of deal, and after that, I'll charge you a monthly, whatever it is I'm going to charge you, and you're going to be okay and happy with it. Well, they're not. I mean, that's the fact of the matter, and that's the problem that we're seeing, and that's the problem that we came to solve. And for us, scaling, what we're trying to do with Openlegal is scale it so that we have it set up like a regular business. Most law firms are not. Most law firms are set up very hierarchically, in a pyramid shape, where you have the partners at the top, you have the associates down below them, and then below them you have your support staff. We're trying to make it a little bit more of a sphere or a circle, where a lot of the times you have your lawyers in the middle, and then around that is going to be the support to take on all of the other work. Well, as Rick mentioned, that's the challenge. That's what we're trying to do right now as we're scaling up, because it is a difficult premise. We can't go out and get lawyers to join our network and to believe in what we're doing that are used to making $500 to $1,000 an hour. They're just not going to be interested. But we can get lawyers that at this point are okay with taking a reduced hourly rate effectively if they will have less of a workload, where they're going to be working 2,200 hours a year, and they don't want that either.
I love that. Well, and that, of course, you're sharing with us, which is so wonderful, a typical challenge that many of us have in building our businesses. And, of course, that's where you're going to attract like-minded attorneys. So anybody watching, if you know any great like-minded attorneys, have them go see Rick and John. And, of course, for those of us who love to get the support that we need, the legal advice that we need, but we don't sometimes even know where to go, or we know that the price is just going to be too exorbitant, and so we lead a little more of a risky business lifestyle than we should by not making sure we are legally protected and prepared. So I just love what you all are sharing. I want to say a quick shout out to all the live viewers. Thanks for tuning in. And Tom Collins, you wrote a wonderful note that I thought I hit the pin button and I didn't. So either please put up the wonderful question you had about the conference in Chicago, or hop into the Afterglow chat. Now, everybody, you know that at the end of the broadcast, I'm going to put the link right here to this room, only it will be after I hit end broadcast. And it's a great chance to meet these two wonderful attorneys as well as other like-minded entrepreneurs. So I hope that we will see you there. And I want you also to hop on over to openlegal.co and check out the packages and the services that Rick and John offer. Seriously, you're going to love them. But now we're going to get started into what do we need in our legal survival kits, because from day one, we have big decisions to make, right, guys? So, for example, a lot of people get stuck on what kind of entity they want to start their business as. Do they go right into an Inc. or a subchapter S or an LLC, or what's so bad about a DBA? What do you think, Rick?
So I know John has some. John's the stats and figures guy, and he's going to throw a bunch at you. But one of the important things that, again, I had a lot of misconceptions and preconceived notions from law school learning and just doing things the wrong way as an entrepreneur before really being, engulfed in this space and seeing the reality of things. It really depends on the particular type of business you have and when and if and what type of money you're trying to raise. So if you're a small family-owned business that is, like my family is in the restaurant business, and each one of our locations, because the ownership differs a little bit with any partners we bring in, we have separate LLCs, but there's a parent corporation that's an Inc. in Illinois that owns all the IP and sort of licensing it out to those other locations. But having an LLC for each one of those with, basically 2 to 3 partners, and you're only on a statewide level, that's really all you need. However, if they were going to switch into, say, like the franchising model and go nationwide, there's only one type of corporation, or what type of entity you'd have, and that would be a corporation, and it would be a Delaware C Corp. And that goes the same for if you are a, hopefully, high-growth tech company or in the tech space at all. If you are trying to raise capital, you have to be a Delaware C Corp. There is just absolutely no way around it. If you're an LLC and that's how you started, that's okay, but just understand that while you're going through the raise process, you are going to be converted. So you've essentially paid your lawyers twice, or actually kind of 3 times if you look at it this way. 1, to set up your LLC, and hopefully have done it right. 2, to convert you, and then 3, to set up your C Corp. So if you're going to go that way, it's best to start off the right way, have everything done properly, particularly, as John will tell you, in the first few years of your company anyways. The biggest concern is always taxes, right? That's why people tell you to go the other direction. Well, if you have a good accountant, or if you're like any other type of small business, you are probably not going to turn a profit in your first few years, at least on paper, even if you're paying your employees out. So you're not making the type of money where the double taxation even comes into play, but it will prevent you from raising capital. So it's really
share the Delaware bit, because I thought there was some Nevada going on.
There is a trend going there, and that's because of the low state income tax and the lower fees, et cetera. So there are people doing that, and that's okay. But really, the gold standard has always been the Delaware C Corp, simply because, as you mentioned before, lawyers are sort of afraid of their own shadow and are risk averse. So one of the things that we like is predictability. And when you have all of these years of practice and a knowledge base on how Delaware operates, types of court decisions, particularly in the corporate space, it allows a layer of predictability, and it's sort of if you build it, they will come situation where, because everyone has done it, it's what everyone does, so it's everyone's familiar with. If you throw in a separate state law in a separate state situation, when you're going into, say, a VC firm that has done Delaware C Corps and all their investments for 20 years, and now you throw a Nevada corporation at them, what you've done is you've created more work, which ultimately gets taken out of your raise. So it's going to be more legal. So if you threw that at us, obviously we'd be navigating new waters, which means more time, which means more spend on your lawyers and accountants, rather than you using it to help grow your company.
Right. And are you an agent in Delaware? Do you represent, or does if someone were to use Openlegal, or do they need to get their own agent in Delaware?
So pretty much no one is an agent in Delaware other than the registered agent services. So yes, we represent companies that are filed in, that have their C corporations filed in Delaware. However, you use something like a corporate agent service as far as the mailing, and that just gets forwarded on. That's pretty standard for about probably 98% of companies fees?
Yeah, for companies that I've had, it's about $250 a year for
Yeah.
your registered agent in Delaware. Of course, I live in Massachusetts. And so we have a big annual filing fee for our LLCs and our Incs. Annual report. It can be pretty costly just in the state alone, right?
Oh, sure, it absolutely can. I mean, but the difference, every state varies in that respect as far as the fees and what they require of you. But I think the important thing there is, yes, it is a fee. Yes, it's something that you wish you didn't have to do. But at the end of the day, is it worth your whole business?
Right.
No,
And
I mean, it's simply a cost of doing business. It's a line item on your yearly budget. And what we are hoping to do with our packages is give the other level of that line item in your budget for spending on your lawyers and not just fees, predictability on a yearly basis. So for us, our packages on the corporate side, in the beginning, it's tougher on us than it is on our clients. But as those clients grow and as time goes on, we become more and more ingrained in their business. And you can obviously see from that, I see your eyes lighting up. You're kind of getting where we're going. Our business model is a slower play. It's not a open up, one and done, and we got a bunch of money rolling in. It's scaling up as our clients grow and scale up, and being their outside legal services rather than having to hire people in-house.
Love it, love it, love it. John, what do you have to add to that as far as making the decision? I have set up many businesses under different parameters, but because most of them I needed to raise money, it was usually a subchapter S or an Inc. What's your advice for the solopreneur, for the coach, somebody who isn't planning on scaling in that regard? They may have packages that they sell that take off, yay, 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 but it's still just them.
Right. Right. I think you can kind of categorize businesses into 2, maybe 3 buckets. I think you mentioned at one point, whether or not a DB is enough. Sometimes it is. As an attorney, very, very rarely would I say it should be, simply because of limited liability protection you get with a business. If you set yourself up as a solo, right, or if, let's say, you bring on a partner, a limited partner, it's a pass-through entity that is just not even recognized by the IRS or by the states in which you have the business running. In that case, if you have any creditors, bills that you have to get paid from contracts that you've done or haven't done, at that point you can't walk away from the business, and I think that's the biggest thing. Walking away from the business requires bankruptcy, which becomes a real big hit to a person's personal credit, and doesn't put the separating line between that person and their business. It becomes very hard for you to walk away from a business and start another one. As you're mentioning, you started many businesses. A lot of the times when you're an entrepreneur, you start multiple businesses. Some succeed, some fail. As Rick was saying, there's that other piece of it, which we do most of our practice in the high growth technology startup space, where getting the Delaware C Corp is almost not, like you mentioned, 98%. You have to do it unless at a certain point, investors are coming to give you money right away. And even then, by the second round of that funding, they're going to require you to do the Delaware C Corp anyway. If you're a small business, and let's say that's that other group where you may not be raising money, or even if you are, you're raising money and you're putting partners into a group. A lot of the times when you're doing something like that, if everybody's putting in a few $1,000s or a few tens of thousands of dollars to get this business off the ground, an LLC is usually a very good vehicle for that. You can split up the partnership into memberships, and you can have certain numbers of those members be managers in those particular LLCs. And LLCs, though they're only 20 years old, it's funny, most people think that LLCs have been around a lot longer than that. They've only generally been around in all of the states for about years, about the mid-90s, when all of the states actually adopted the rules to allow for LLCs. Before that, and why you mentioned, before that, subchapter S corporations were the way to go. And you see now that, if you had a company in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you were a small business, you were usually a subchapter S corporation. If you're now a small
I'm dating
business,
myself here, everybody.
well, or if the business has been running, for a long time, subchapter S corporations are good. A lot of the times now, what I see, you create yourself as a subchapter S corporation if you use it for tax purposes and you know that you're going to raise money later on as a C corp, because a subchapter S corporation can be either an LLC taxed as a subchapter S or a C corp taxed as a subchapter S, and the real reason for that is to just get tax benefits on it as you're small. A lot of people don't realize, we've had some clients come to us before and say, can we be an S corporation? Because a lot of the books that are out there tell you, you can do that. But there are certain limits to that as well. I mean, sometimes they, are something as simple as a subchapter S corporation. Let's say you have a foreign investor. You can't be a subchapter S. If you're looking for more than 100 shareholders, you can't be a subchapter S. So there's certain limits on that as well.
Yeah, we see that come up because when we say that as a shareholder, a lot of times it's the founders. So in tech companies, when we have students coming over from all across the world to come to our engineering schools, particularly think about in Silicon Valley, and they come out, they workshop, they start these startups with their friends from school, and they legally, if they did that, could not own a part of their own company.
Oh, boy, that's sad. Well, see, this is what I'm talking about, folks. We don't know what we don't know, and that's never good. And along with all the startup requiring documents that we need, especially if you Inc. I mean, you've got to have your bylaws, your minutes, your articles of incorporation. You've got to have your federal tax ID number. But there's also some things that people forget to do, or maybe they're just too polite and they don't think about doing it, which is the very important employee agreements, and to me, the non-disclosure or non-compete agreements. What are your thoughts about those kind of documents in our legal survival kit?
Yeah, I think that's why you liked our packages so much, because we laid a lot of that stuff out in there, where it's the things that are not often talked about and often overlooked as, no, we can do that later, or, oh, no, that's overkill, you don't need it, but you really do. Non-disclosures, confidentiality agreements are important. Often when you're starting, you're going to have your independent contractor agreements. Something that John and I see all the time, particularly in this, in the tech space or in really any space. We have a client right now that's making a product in the pet industry, so it's not really high tech. But what happens is it usually starts with 2-3 people sitting in a room coming up with the idea, right? And they're drawing it up on the board and they're writing it all out, and then they call someone, and then they do this and then they do that. Well, you've made disclosures, you've talked to a bunch of people, and on top of it, you've co-created this thing with multiple people, and then you've only later started your company. So a lot of people miss the piece of the assignment agreement, where all the people who came up with this in the garage together are now assigning everything that predates the company over to the company. That's a very important piece that a lot of people leave out.
Oh my gosh, I would never have thought of that. You're absolutely right.
And there's been a number of probably, I don't even know, I could make up any number of disputes that have been over that exact thing, which is what belonged to whom and when.
Well, hello, social network, Facebook.
Well, that's exactly right. Had they have done that correctly, the Winklevi probably would have had a lot of easier time fighting. So yeah, that's another important piece. The other important piece, and I'll let John speak to this a little bit more, is with vesting. We find a lot of companies who say, oh, well, there's 3 of us, so we all have an equal share, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and they either don't authorize and issue the stock correctly, or they do it and they do it all at once. And John will tell you why that's not a good idea, to have it all authorized and issued right away as well.
Give us an example, John.
Yeah. Well, actually, in an LLC, for example, if a lot of the times, let's say you were starting a business, let's call it a restaurant, and all partners, they're going to all put in, let's say you're not buying a franchise, which is going to cost you a couple $100,000. You're going to do your own little food truck business. So you're going to buy the food truck, and you're going to buy the materials and the food. So everybody's going to put in $20,000 from their 401k, right? They're going to pull out $20,000, put it into business. Well, how do you account for that? One, I see a lot of companies throw that money into the business and forget to write either that money as the payment for their shares or their units, or their membership, if you will. Units and membership are the same thing in an LLC. Or if they want to put that money in and get different, let's say the money is for part of their shares and also for part of the investment, and each of the person, the three people that are going to be in the business, they don't have an equal operating role. They want to divvy up the operating roles differently, and they want to have an unequal share. Well, now you've got little issues here that can be solved at the beginning fairly easily, and I would say about 60-70% of companies forget to do this. What they really should be doing is, if one of the members is putting in their $20,000, but is going to take a reduced role in the business, that $20,000 shouldn't be going in as an equal share. It should be going in as partially paying for that share, if they would like to, and partially as a loan. And then that loan gets paid back at whatever rate needs to be happening in that business. And so you see, even in businesses that are not high tech, that are not going to get investment, and the investment comes from the founders themselves, a lot of the times, if you don't get it right at the beginning, here's what will happen. A year into the business, now all of a sudden, let's say we were doing all three equal shares and all three equal operating roles. Two of them have a fight with the other, and that person's, they're done with the business. Well, if they had an equal share, now what has to happen? You have to bring somebody else into the business. Well, you don't have that to give. You don't have that equal share. So now this third person, if you didn't vest, as Rick was talking about earlier, it's a really interesting technique to vest shares in a business, because the way that it's typically, when you first think about starting a business, is I'll split the business up into those equal shares, and I'll have that forever. Well, that's just not how a business runs, either from a startup level all the way up to a Fortune 500 company. That share of that business is fluctuating all the time, and it should be set up the same way as a small business as well. So if somebody leaves the business, there has to be a buy-sell agreement or a buyout clause in those agreements, and a way to take that piece away back from that original shareholder or partner, so that you have a piece of the pie remaining for that next person you're going to bring into the business. Otherwise, the business kind of dies.
Right.
And that's what we see. And I'm sure there's many other examples we can give, but that's the there are tricks of the trade, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Vesting being one of them.
This is where, folks, the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah, I mean, even there, like John said, with the buy-sell agreements, to then have insurance on your key people that are there under those provisions, I would say 95% of the entrepreneurs we meet don't even think of that. And we go, well, if something happens, and I'm married, so if something happens to me, well, now my wife, it's a little different with lawyers, but just for the sake of this, say we're just a business. Now my wife owns 50% of my business with John, and I don't think John wants my wife to be his business partner. So if I own 50% and the business is worth $1 million, what does John have to come up with $500,000, or the company does, to pay her? No, you have insurance that handles the money to handle the buyout, because you're not going to have that happen where Uncle Fred then becomes the new business partner, because that's who I bequeathed my interest to. I might do that, but they can pay for it out of the insurance.
Yeah, I mean, that makes for a great lifetime, night at the movies when they have one of those shows. But really, you don't want that for your business. And what I'm really hearing is set your business up day one as if it's a publicly traded corporation, and put everything in place just in case. And I'd love to take this moment, guys, because we're talking about a lot of legal advice here, and we are just chatting, folks. These two wonderful attorneys are not giving their, quote, bona fide advice. Right, John and Rick? This is a conversation. You must go and talk to your own legal representation. Do you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, this is not legal advice, period. We have to make that disclaimer every time we go out and talk. And it's a rule of lawyers. It's an ethics rule. You can get advice from, any lawyer that's out there to engage them and to, sign an engagement agreement to get them as your counsel. That's one of the. It's interesting. That's one of the main differences, Andy, that we've done with Openlegal is that it's, technically there are all sorts of rules around lawyers and, who can own law firms and who can be part of the ownership model and how much money you can raise. The answer is zero unless it's from other lawyers to set up a legal business. For us, one of the main differences is that legal, you're not getting, forms. You're not getting, a package that you might see on a site, for example, like LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, other ones that are out there like that. What you're doing is you're getting actual attorneys working on your products, and you're signing an engagement agreement with an attorney so that you can get that legal advice. But with the predictability of that package that we've designed, you're able to give us a call when you need to. It's one of the biggest things that I've encountered in my career as an attorney is a lot of clients will get to that point of being very comfortable with their attorneys at the beginning. Clients that are in their first business, they'll give them a call on the phone, or they'll type them an email, and then at the end of the month they'll get a bill for $85.52 for that call or for that email. And what happens is, it's just like Pavlov's dog, right? You get burned once, you're not going to do the same thing again. You're not going to touch the stove. You're not going to talk to your attorney. And that, we feel, is like the wrong model of talking and engaging with clients. We want you to be able to talk to us. We want you to be able to pick up that phone and write that email, and we build it into our packages.
I have to tell you, you guys have incorporated a lot of my questions today because your examples have been so wonderful, all different levels and all types of businesses. Folks, seriously, this conversation that we're having about what your legal survival kit needs to contain, it's an eye-opener because I want for you what you want for you, which is a successful outcome for your business. But make sure you have the legal documents in place. And those of you who find that someone slips you an NDA and says, I need you to sign this, don't take it personally. They're just doing what's right for their business, and we want you to do that for your business as well. And you've done a great job, too, John and Rick, sharing the kind of mistakes that entrepreneurs make along the way by not being prepared or not being thorough in their documentation. So I appreciate all the time you've taken to share those specific examples with us today. What is it now that you're seeing on the horizon? We see that you're growing, which is so exciting. I know I'll be checking in all the time to see how you're doing. But what other things are exciting you about Openlegal? I mean, first of all, I just have to say thank you for sharing the fact that the legal practice is different and that having a business entity has to be so much more rewarding and hopefully prosperous for you both.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that one of the things for us, it's something that you highlighted with me earlier, which is, well, how do we represent people all over the country? Because it by nature is a local practice because you have to be licensed. So right now we carry licenses, and John, tell me if I miss one, Illinois, Indiana, and California, as well as the patent bar and some federal bars, etc. But we are able to do IP law because it's federal in nature, and some securities work, as well as some others because they're under federal law. So we're able to do those for people anywhere. As far as the statewide law, those specific, that's where the Openlegal network comes in, and where we are very carefully adding people who fit into our model that are licensed in other locations. Like I myself am California and Illinois. And we have another attorney joining us who's also licensed in California, and we'll hopefully be inking some docs with another lawyer this week who is Illinois and Florida. So we are very carefully choosing our markets and our people that have, someone with more than one license is particularly helpful because it carries more than one, but that sort of answers that, and I think that's really our next step, which is grabbing those jurisdictions where there is a big need for this.
Right. And Rick, when you say government, can you do patents and trademarks with the USPTO?
Yeah, so at our practice, John and I both do trademark and copyright. I do a lot more of that side with the soft IP and transactional work, and John will tell you his background right now as a patent attorney, and not litigation. John's an actual patent prosecutor.
Yeah, so what's really kind of cool about that, Andy, is that in order to grow a national business as a law firm, very few law firms are national when they're just starting out. The big law firms are, but they create pockets and offices in different big cities. For us, we don't want to follow that model. That model is a little too top heavy for creating offices, office space, fancy marble, walkways and desks, and that's not what we're trying to do. For us, it's, number one, nationally, we can do patents and trademarks and all of the IP work right now for entrepreneurs and startups because of the ability to do that on a federal level. So I'm barred as a patent attorney. As Rick said, federal law is trademarks and copyrights as well. So we can do that, the intellectual property side and the packages you see on the Openlegal website nationwide. And then all of the other packages that you're seeing having to do with the corporate setups, those are what we're actively right now, what we're trying to do, and what we're getting our heads around, and as we're growing as a business, is figuring out what are the best markets to grow into. Right now, like we said, we've got an office here in Chicago and in San Francisco, and we've actively been pursuing the Florida market, New York as well, to see where those burgeoning entrepreneur hubs are, in order to kind of lay some roots down as well.
And don't forget the future, Boston. We have lots of incubators here.
And in Boston as well. There are. What we're finding too is, there's interesting models that we can follow too, dealing with a lot of the co-working spaces and a lot of the office spaces, the shared office spaces now that are popping up as a new model for work for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Following those spaces as they're growing. In New York City, a company called WeWork is actually the #1 holder of real estate in that city right now, after raising multiple hundreds of millions of dollars as a real estate startup play in order to put out and build out these offices where entrepreneurs can then go in, rent a space, and really start their business. And before, 10, 15 years ago, the cost of starting a business has actually come way, way down. Now you can rent a desk at an office space and be in a space where there are another 100 entrepreneurs that are doing the exact same thing as you. There's programming around those as well.
Yeah, and it takes the isolation away, and it creates brainstorming moments over coffee. It's just really wonderful versus those of us who are working out of our home office. Two things that we could take a whole show to talk about, of course, are I'm just a huge advocate for people getting trademarks. A lot of people will throw a TM after their name or an R and think that they've done enough. You have not. This is one of the most important assets that you have, your name, your brand, etc. Get it trademarked, people. And second, and you guys have that at Openlegal, so hop onto openlegal.co and grab that package, because it's time-consuming to do a trademark. It'd be much easier to work with these two wonderful, delightful attorneys on that. And the other thing that we have, because we had a equity crowdfunding expert on last week, Manolis, he, all this new fundraising due to the Reg A, due to the Jobs Act of 2012, there's a lot more going on in fundraising and equity raises and even debt raises right now. So you guys are more important than ever for a business that's ready to grow, right?
Sure. There's a lot of confusion out there right now. We tuned in briefly to listen to your last show, but we didn't admittedly see all of it. Reg A Plus, it was what they're calling it. It doesn't come into effect until the 19th of June, right. So no one's done it yet. So people are preparing docs, trying to figure out how it's going to work, particularly for the smaller companies. Knowing what the SEC is still requiring of companies in order to complete this, it's going to be no small task.
Yeah, that's why I've been also saying don't go out and do that unless you're raising over $1 million. It's going to be
absolutely
$35K at least.
Exactly. John will tell you. He gave a great example of a client who called and said, "I just raised $500,000 and the lawyers took $50." It's like, yeah, because it was a lot of work. So we work on deals like that as well, but I would caution your listeners, to anyone who says, "Oh, I'm an expert in this," and I will do this for you, to probably turn the other way, because no one's an expert at this point in it. I would say let the big dogs try it, and people who want to waste money, and then we'll see how it flushes out on the first round of these.
I love that advice.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. Yeah, we'll learn, because we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be watching and with a careful eye and bated breath to see how it's executed and see what the SEC, frankly, lets people get away with. Because I think it's being sold as sort of a this pill that's going to solve everything, and it certainly isn't. There's the government can only get so creative. They can't help themselves but to muck it up a bit.
Well, I just want to take a few seconds just to bring up a few comments from folks as we begin to wrap things up, because this is, again, 2 weeks in a row diving deep into complicated topics, but it's so important that we have this in our toolkit as entrepreneurs, that we are aware and we stay enlightened and don't keep our heads in the sand. So, Monica, thank you so much for tuning in. I agree. John and Rick, amazing conversation that they've provided us for us today. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day. And then Cheryl here saying, excellent, leaving the business advice plus insurance contracts, etc. Thanks, guys. Seriously, we can all say thank you. And then I'm hoping Tom is going to hop into the after chat room with us, because he wants to talk about he'd really like to hear more about these conferences. And he was at the ABA Tech Show in Chicago in 2001, etc. So, Tom, I hope that you can come join us and ask the guys personally in the unrecorded section, and etc. So, as we wrap things up, I first want to say thank you to my live participants. There was a huge crew of you here today. I hope you were taking notes. God bless you for sticking through. I know talking legal is fun for some people, but not for everybody, Rick and John, sorry. And but it's so, so important. As CEOs of our own businesses, we must rise to the occasion and know our business inside and out. Doesn't mean you have to do it. You can delegate. You can leverage by hiring Openlegal, by retaining John and Rick to help you with your startup, with your growing, if you're scaling, you're bringing in on new employees, more subcontractors. Get the right legal documents in. Any final words, Rick and or John, before we end the show?
Sure. I mean, I'll just wrap up by saying that, one, we call the ABA Tech Show the show for technology's past, because it's sort of like a museum of technology. It's a couple of years behind, especially when you're in the space that John and I are, going to tech shows and John running and producing shows. It's a little bit behind. And then also, because you've allowed us to come on here and talk to your audience, if they mention to us that they found us through you, if they just mention your name or your show, we will give them 10% off on the trademark packages. Which we didn't even tell you. Look at that. That's a surprise for you.
Yay! Oh, we love that. Thank you, Rick.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Appreciate the opportunity to get on the show and really just be able to talk to the entrepreneurs and the startups that are out there. That's really, it's what we've done in designing the firm over the last couple of years, and it's exciting. I mean, we get a thrill out of working with the companies and the founders that get a thrill out of having a passion for their business. So it really gets us up in the morning as well.
Well, and I think I can speak for the viewers, too, how exciting it is to have attorneys who also know what it's like to start a business, who have had their fingers in the pie, and are not just sitting there as a case study working for us. This is really wonderful that you both are entrepreneurial adventurers. And I love, too, how you both shared your own challenges with starting your business. And, especially with the Openlegal and the scaling and the packages. Trust me, it's what we're all talking about every day. So that was really, really cool. I just want to say hi to Monica here. Monica, I feel the same way. So much of this is overwhelming, but it's something that we absolutely have to discuss. Thanks for tuning in today. That's great. To all my friends who stopped by and said they were going to catch the replay, I'm just going to send out my mwahs to you. I know Wandering Poet and Carmen. Hi, Carmen. And David Schiffman. You're going to love this replay. I'm telling you, Deborah and Dave Moore, and of course Cherie Valentine, who watches while she's cooking, and Frank Gainsford. I am so grateful for how much you share the show every week. You're amazing. And to those of you who have tuned into the replay, heartfelt thanks for taking the time to really know your business and be the CEO of your wonderful entrepreneurial venture, and especially thank you for having the courage to be an entrepreneur. Oh my gosh. Next week, that's May 19th, I've got the Radical Self-Awareness, amazing founder of the Human Innovation Garage. It's Stefan, and I'm not going to get his last name right, I am sure, Thyringer. And I've met this guy. We've hung out, but I never get the name right. I'm so sorry. But we're going to be talking about some great CEO skills and advice that you need to manage and run and grow and scale your business. So until next week, I'm wishing you an Andelicious day. Bye, everybody. Mwah. Say goodbye. Wave, Rick. Go ahead. There we go. And there's Jonathan. Thank you guys so very much for joining me today and providing such amazing information to the audience today.
Thanks, Andy.
Really, you have saved companies' lives today. Trust me. Bye, everyone.